Feeling stuck or unfulfilled? Searching for more meaning in your work and life? Wondering what's next? You're not alone, and you're in the right place. This is Focus on Why, the podcast that turns reflection into action. I'm Amy Rowlandson, and each week I dive deep with guests who've chosen to live and work with purpose. Together we explore what drives them, shapes their decisions, and gives their life meaning. Through real stories and honest conversations, you'll discover how to gain clarity, make confident choices, and create a life that truly matters. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why. Do you understand the power of a focus on why in business? Are your people truly engaged and finding meaning in their work? I deliver practical, interactive workshops that boost engagement, fulfillment, well-being, and purpose, all key drivers of higher productivity and performance. If you're ready to close your purpose gaps, reach out via the link in the show notes today. Today on Focus on Why, I am joined by Louise Camby. Hello, Louise. How are you?
Hello, Amy. Very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really well, and I'm looking forward to hearing your focus on why. So let's kick this off with what is it that you're focusing on right now?
Well, I'm very much focusing on my grandfather and his legacy at the moment, which is absolutely amazing.
Tell me more.
So he was a phenomenal musical director, composer, arranger, conductor, and he wrote a lot of music. The most, I suppose, household music that he wrote was for the Railway Children film, so the full score to the 1970 film that many people have watched in their homes with Jenny Agutter. He also wrote lots of the Marvel television animation music in the 1980s, like Spider-Man, Dungeons and Dragons, and The Incredible Hulk, as well as working with phenomenal people like Dame Vera Lynn, Barbara Streisand, Shirley Bassey. So he had such a phenomenal career. He was such an amazing, talented man and a lovely human being as well, a true gentleman, as it were. So for me now to sort of be living his legacy, cultivating his legacy, and getting this music out to the fans is incredible. Because I basically found the Marvel music not that long ago, 2022. I literally stumbled over it in a box and realized this was the actual music from these television animation series. And I knew that fans wanted it and hadn't realized that we had it basically. So it's been a great journey getting this music out for the fans recently.
I can imagine. I mean, there's been such a resurgence with 1980s style stuff, sex education's based in the 80s, even though it's like modern day as well. And then you've got Stranger Things and that whole era of Marvel with the Dungeons and Dragons. It was such a fantastic thing. I remember it being a kid. So, yeah, I can imagine. You talk about these fans. Who are these fans?
Well, they're thankfully all over the world, but they're predominantly gentlemen. It's mainly the men that have grown up in the 80s and are saying things to me like, this is the soundtrack to their childhoods, and they've been waiting 40 years for this. And they're so grateful and they're so appreciative, really, of everything that I've done for them. By first of all, I got it out onto the streaming platforms for them, and then they were sort of messaging their gratitude and saying, could I do it as a physical album? Some wanted vinyl because, of course, vinyl's all coming back and popular now. Someone like Taylor Swift only releases on vinyl, so people like her really do champion that amazing medium. And but there were other fans that said, I don't have a vinyl player and I'd rather it was on CD. So that's what I've done. I've literally released Dungeons and Dragons, Spider-Man, and The Incredible Hulk as a triple album box set in both vinyl and CD. And it came out literally just over 2 weeks ago.
Amazing. And this soundtrack to childhood, it is amazing what music does and what it evokes and how it is timeless in some ways. And whenever you watch a TV or a film, the score is critical because if you turn the sound down, there's nothing really going on. Yes, you can see moving pictures, but the score really makes it.
It really evokes emotion in such a more powerful way than we're often realised. And I think that's right. I think it should be more subliminal, really. You don't want it overtaking you, but it's there. And you always know something bad's going to happen, don't you? Because that music's building and you can start to feel that emotion of nerves and anticipation because of the music that you wouldn't get if the music wasn't there. as well as, of course, beautiful melodies, romantic melodies, and it can really hit you in the heart and evoke a lot of emotion. And I think with the music that I've just released now for the fans, is it's bringing them back to their childhoods of a time when you didn't maybe have the worries that you have now in life. You were innocent and excited and could just enjoy your cartoons. It was a very, very happy, free time when you're in your childhood like that. And now I've kind of given them the soundtrack back. So they're very pleased.
And it's interesting because you say you don't want it overtaking the whole film and the experience. But when you just pause, and I often do this and just think, oh, there's a flute, or there's a violin, or there's a piano. And it seems so strange that these instruments, those classical instruments, are being married with a very modern piece of filmmaking.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think the thing that's going on at the moment that is so phenomenal, and I would recommend anyone to go and experience. They do it at the Royal Albert Hall, but actually, I went to one Christmas a year ago in Brighton, where they're screening a film and a live orchestra is playing the soundtrack. I experienced this, as I said, in Brighton with the Holiday film. So, a classic, wonderful film with a phenomenal soundtrack by Hans Zimmer. I was absolutely blown away, even more than I thought I was going to be, watching this film that I knew and loved anyway, with this orchestra that you're actually watching that flute pick up the instrument, that flautist, and start to play. And it just brought the whole film alive. You felt like you were in it, and the soundtrack just meant so much more having heard it live while watching the film as opposed to it being embedded in. It was such an amazing experience, and I know lots are going on up in London for that, and I know many people who've been and said what an immersive, phenomenal feeling that it is really.
And you mentioned Hans Zimmer. And of course, when you spoke right at the beginning about your grandfather and his legacy, Hans Zimmer, John Williams, for us are those people today. Was your grandfather the equivalent in his time?
Yes, but maybe not quite such a household name. I would absolutely say that a couple of the other composers are bigger household names. With my grandfather, and he was very happy with it, it was more the piece that was known. So the Railway Children, for instance, and he, as the composer, was a pretty secondary name from the normal layman on the street, as it were, the everyday person. Within the industry, he was extremely well known, extremely respected. And just the other week, when I was in an amateur dramatic show and got speaking to the drummer, just because he was so amazing, this drummer, and I just sort of mentioned my grandfather, actually mentioned another drummer and asked him if he knew him, and they did. And so we then got talking about my grandfather because the other drummer had played for him. And immediately he was like, my goodness, Johnny Douglas. Oh my goodness, what a legend. So I never got to play for him, but I knew all about him. I love his music. I knew the Railway Children. I knew Dulcimer, this. And he literally knew so much because he's a musician, even though he wasn't someone that was playing for my grandfather in those years. The musical world know each other, if that makes sense. So, but my grandfather liked the fact he wasn't a household name and he could go and do his shopping and nobody would recognize him.
Yeah, I don't blame him. Who wants to be mobbed by the paparazzi?
Exactly.
So, legacy, what does it mean to you, Louise?
I think since I've been working on my grandfather's legacy, without a doubt, which has been very active for the last 6 years, it's made, the word legacy, the whole thing of us thinking about our legacies become so much more prominent and important and valuable in our lives. The more I've lived his and realized what a phenomenal legacy that is, and that there are people that were born after he passed away that are watching and the programs and listening to his music and are a fan of his music. I think legacy is so powerful because we will all be remembered in some which way for whatever it is that we do. And this can either be something that happens by accident and something we're not in control of, or it can now be something that we can control more. Now, I wish if my grandfather was alive that I could have asked him way more questions. He could have given me way more information and ultimately controlled a bit more of how his legacy could have lived on. Sadly, I didn't get that pleasure. I knew him very well. I was 29 when he passed away. And thankfully, he had written a short biography, and thankfully, he'd written lots of music, and there was radio interviews and newspaper articles. So I'm luckier than most. But many people pass and you just regret you didn't ask them or you don't know that information. So I think the more that we can think of the power of legacy for our families, our friends, people that know us well, but also in business, thinking about it for our work and our job, whether you're employed by somebody and the legacy of you in that role for that period of time, or it's your own company, thinking about the larger, greater impact that you can have as opposed to just what you're achieving today, I think is a very powerful and valuable thing for people to do in their everyday lives for themselves and their business.
Do you think there was a reason that you found this collection of works in 2022 and not earlier?
Possibly, because the timing was good. We'd just come out of lockdown, really, or semi out of lockdown, and I had very much got more involved in the family business during that time because, as a speaker, like yourself, speaking jobs sort of disappeared overnight, didn't they? They gradually came back on Zoom, but it meant I was freed up with a lot more time and space to look at other things and do other things. So I do owe it to lockdown. I do owe it to that time in a way. And then it was throughout the sort of process of, sort of taking on the family business and beginning to run it and organize it that I realized there was lots of opportunities here. I realized I should be out there speaking about my grandfather to people, and they love that talk with his music and his stories. And then sort of through that process found more tapes and more reels, and literally came upon it and thought, wow, this is something I've got to do something with. And it's been such a huge learning journey. I've literally had to learn as I go because I've never done anything like this before. And the learning I've kind of learned amongst that is actually if you just put your hands up and surrender and say to people, I have no idea what I'm doing, please help me. You know, you can talk your jargon, but I do need you to explain that in English afterwards, and then we can continue in your jargon. And people have been amazing. I think because of what the music is, it's not like I'm releasing my grandfather's music he composed in his spare room and no one's heard of it or him. This is very different. People react very differently when I say, oh, my grandfather wrote this repertoire of Marvel music. They're like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. And people have just been so helpful with ideas or telling me what I need to do and helping me out, which has been a saving grace, really.
Yeah, the reason I ask is that it is a huge piece of work. It's a creative piece of work that you've been involved in. But the legacy piece, particularly, I think as we get older and we change our priorities in life, legacy does become more of a focus for us.
I agree. And especially when you start to go to a lot more funerals and celebrations of life, and you realize you're learning more about that person in their eulogy than you ever knew when they were alive, and you're regretting you didn't know it then and you wished you had known it then. I think some of that has also made me realize that it's so important that we share our stories and our interests and things with people so that we can live it and love it, not learn it too late, as it were. So I think there's a lot around that. But you're asking me about the timing. I think the timing was right because I think it's taken me a while to sort of get to this point with all the learning I've had to do in life generally. And now it very much feels like the right time to take on the full reins of the family business. And I've had enough experience and learning within certain aspects and have a lovely, good network that I collaborate with that can help me on that journey now. Whereas 10 or 20 years ago, I don't think it would have quite been the same, even though the fans would have been happy to have the music sooner, maybe.
So we have something in common in the fact that we have both collaborated with our late grandfathers and
Yeah.
created something that wasn't there before, which using their works, which I find incredible, and I know hearing what you've just shared, you do too. In
Yeah.
terms of the regrets and the questions that you would have asked him, what might some of those have been?
Well, interestingly, one of the questions I had was how did he get to be composing the Railway Children film music, for instance? It's a big piece, it's become a huge name, a huge film. And I thought, how did he get chosen? Why him? And I had that question pondering in my head for a couple of years, I would guess, all through the lockdown period, etc. And then luckily, with this box of cassette tapes, and I still have many of them to listen to, and I'm gradually digitizing them, some of my questions are being answered by him himself because he's been asked that on the radio. I couldn't believe it. Literally, it sent shivers down my spine to think I now was hearing his voice answer my question. And I can tell you the reason he was asked is the producer, Robert Flynn, was the producer of a film called The Traitors. And that was Grandad's first film score that he wrote the music for about 3 years earlier. And so when the Railway Children came up with Robert Flynn, producer, Lionel Jeffries as the director, Robert said to Lionel, there's just one man for the music. It's Johnny Douglas. Let's call him in and see what he can do. And he had to audition. And I learned all of this on this interview, that he had to do some melodies as like a little sample audition of how he felt this little melody would suit that character. And once they'd heard a few of his little pieces, they thought he was absolutely on it. And that's how it happened. So, yeah,
Wow.
I might well get more answers or just learn more anyway from the rest of the cassettes. It's exciting.
Yeah, I love that. It is interesting. And you said shivers down your spine. What was the emotion that you were feeling with those shivers?
I felt like it's as if he was, in a way, helping me cultivate his legacy. There felt like there was this connection to him, and I honestly feel it every day. I honestly feel like he's alive every day with me, because he is so much in my world constantly, with the business, with the music, with decisions I'm making, with learning that I have to do, and everything. The music we hear, he's completely there. So when I sort of played those cassettes, and when I first played the first one, it was 20 years since we'd heard his voice. And that was so special. So that was very emotional for my mother and myself. Very, very moving. We were in tears just hearing his voice again. It just felt like he was back. It just felt like he was with us. And the fact he was giving me information that I had in my head I wanted to know was just incredible. It was so powerful.
So, this powerful connection, this power of legacy, where does purpose come in, Louise?
Well, it feels like this has become my purpose more than me sort of waking up and choosing a purpose and then fulfilling it. It feels very, very much like my grandfather and his legacy has become part of my purpose, to cultivate it, ensure that it lives on after me, that it's there for my nephews and future generations generally. And I feel dutiful in many ways, but it's an absolute honor and privilege to do this, that I cultivate as much as I can, document as much as I can, get the book written, release as much music so that it can go on and inspire future generations to come.
Yeah, I love that. And this evolution, this purpose that has become, had you been even thinking about a purpose in life before this?
Probably not. I think it's something I struggled with many years, knowing what actually was my purpose. I was living life, I was loving life, doing lots of different things, different income sources, and loving what I was doing, but couldn't really find what it was all about, what was all meant to be happening, and how I could channel that. And in a way, I even sort of owe it to lockdown again, that time to sort of reset and catch up, to focus and finally find that purpose and that mission, and sort of, well, yeah, really get a carve my life through the speaking world and the running of the family business. It sort of all came together quite hand in hand, really, and it feels absolutely brilliant. And I can look back now on all those years where I wasn't really finding my way. I didn't really have a strong purpose, and I was just living and loving life. I can still owe quite a lot to it and think, actually, that's when I learned that, or that's when I met that person, or that's when that experience shaped me. So it all helped, even though I was possibly on, stormy, not stormy, but bubbly waters. It was all a bit all over the place. Whereas now it feels really quite clear, and it feels solid inside me, really. And I feel very driven by it. So the whole having a purpose, I really think, is a very, very powerful thing for people, because it just motivates you. It helps you with your discipline and your energy and your drive, really, to get things done.
And what I've heard you share also is that it's not for you necessarily that you are doing this. Yes, you do enjoy the work, but you know it's serving a whole community, a whole group of people by getting the work out there.
Absolutely, and that drives me more. If I was just doing it for me, for the experience of doing the work, and oh, it's on Apple, it's on Spotify, well done me, I don't think I'd do it. I think it's knowing the fans out there are so grateful, and it's enhancing their life, it's giving something to them, and the ripple effect of all of that. is very much what drives me. It really is, and the love from and respect for my grandfather certainly, but it's knowing how it's being responded to is phenomenal. And the whole way through the project of the box set, I constantly thought of the fans, thinking, what would they like? How would they want this? What information can I share with them in the big booklet where I've shared letters and studio signage sheets? I've literally done it for them. That's how I feel, really.
Yeah. And hearing what they have to say and what they've been coming back to you with, how does that feel?
It feels amazing. It feels lovely for fans to recognise the work and recognise and appreciate what I've done for them and their gratitude. It's amazing, really, and it's inspired me to sort of keep going and keep looking and seeing if there's anything else that I can find and put out there, even though it might be a different fan base for his soundtracks to his movies, for instance. I know I can digitize and release some of those. But it does motivate you to keep going when you feel people are out there appreciating what you do and are thankful. I mean, one fan has actually said they want to play the music, they've put it in their will to have some of the music played at their funeral. So really,
Wow.
really powerful, important things, really, that people are saying to me. So very special.
You mentioned earlier about hearing things about people who've passed when you listen to their or read their eulogy out after, and you'd wish you'd known that about them at the time. What is it that you would like people to know about you, Louise?
Ah, very good question. Well, I think on the top line, it would be that I'm somebody that's lived life to the full and got a very good balance. I'm very much about balance. I would hate to be only working, but I'd also equally hate to only be playing and relaxing and having fun. So I think if anything, if I sort of leave anyone with anything, it would be make sure you've got balance, the balance of work and play, the balance of outside in nature to chilling out in front of a television, the balance of exercising to relaxing in a spa, the balance of being abroad to being at home. All of it for me, if I've got balance, then I feel very fueled, very driven, and absolutely love life. You know, got a balance of hobbies as well, and I sort of feel that everything interconnects in that way, that I could be doing something in a hobby environment and then meet someone that gives me the most unbelievable suggestion or advice, which has then helped my work world. And I've much been about trying to involve the things I love in life into my work. So all my talks around wildlife and nature is brilliant because it causes me to go out there in the world and get great photos and learn about nature and appreciate nature in everyday life. And then I'm able to bring that back and put it into a talk that I'm out sharing with the WI, the U3A, the care homes, etc. And it doesn't feel like work and life is separate. It feels like one, really.
So this interconnectedness and the connection that you felt when you found the tapes and the answers to the questions that you had started to reveal themselves, and the universe in whatever way is conspiring to help you. What other connections might happen if you share with the universe what it is you'd like the answers to?
Oh, I don't know. That's quite an interesting, hard question. That might be to think about that. What other
Well, just
connections?
the or what other questions do you have that might get answered should you put it out there?
Sure. Well, I spent one of the questions that I would love to know is where the original reels to Spider-Man is. I have a lot of customers wanting that, and it seems to be nowhere. So I would love to ask him, where are the original Spider-Man animation music reels, which is before Spider-Man and his amazing friends? And some of the music was crossed over, but it seems crazy that that's just nowhere. You know, it's just, why would that go missing? Where are those reels? And you never know, one day I might trip over them and find them, or I sometimes find that I get a good idea or I get a thought to look somewhere and then you find something incredible. I've noticed that that has happened occasionally, but at this current moment, other than that, those reels, I would love to know where they are. There's nothing. glaring at the minute, but I know that when I start to listen to the rest of these cassette tapes, I'm sure I'm going to learn more, and it's going to probably spur off more questions that I then wish I had answers to. But we'll see. I really do feel, with the way people have come into my world, the way opportunities have appeared, the way the cassettes have appeared, the reels have appeared, that hopefully he's helping me somehow, my grandfather.
Well, you say this, and I'm absolutely with you because I was looking for a particular manuscript of my grandfather's, which I knew he'd written, and I was up in the loft. It wasn't there, but I did find a cassette of a recording that I had made with him in 1990, interviewing him as about his experiences as a prisoner of war. Now, I wouldn't have found that had I not been looking for the other manuscript. And then I wrote about how incredible that was and that I was still looking for this manuscript. And I get an email within a few days from a PhD student based in Australia who'd seen my blog and said, I've actually got all of your grandfather's manuscripts from when he was here in Australia. Would you like them? Not only
Oh
did he have
my goodness.
manuscripts, he had various other documents and he had recordings. So he had TV and films that he had the recordings for because he was studying my grandfather as a PhD student for his work. And so if you ask the question, the answers will come.
That's amazing. That's very inspiring. That definitely has given me hope to keep asking that question. And I've always thought in my head that it has to be somewhere within my immediate world and property. But actually, maybe it's not. Maybe with this music going out there now, someone might reach out to me and say, "Oh, I've got this original Spider-Man music. Would you like it?" That would be
Yeah.
that would
You
be
just don't know, right? I mean, he could have lent it to someone or he could have it could have gone somewhere. It could have gone anywhere else out of the house or for whatever reason, and somebody was doing some piece of research for some songs they were trying to compose. You just don't know, and they've still got them, right?
Absolutely. No, that is the power of the universe and the law of attraction and all that would I absolutely love, to be honest. So no, it would be incredible. I mean, I do in my mind think I hope that maybe there's a reel that's been labeled incorrectly, because at the moment I haven't opened every single box, but I have looked at all the spines and checked everything, and the ones done for Marvel were all in CBS Studios boxes. They all looked the same. So and it was all at the same time. So in my mind, I'm thinking, I think this is unlikely, but you never know. There might just be a sprinkle of magic that's going to happen and it may appear, but that would be something lovely to happen.
Well, I did actually get that manuscript because the BBC archives had them. So, there it is.
Fantastic.
And it's just a case of if you ask the question, it will come. And I do love the fact that you and I with our grandfathers have created an opportunity for people who weren't around in their lifetimes to feel and understand the quality and the depth and the real gravitas of what both of our grandfathers had to offer. And it's bringing people together. I spoke about this at the book launch, and all those people in that room were there because of me and my grandfather, and yet they didn't know him. And this is what you're doing. People don't know your grandfather, and yet they're listening to his work. And
No, it's
I find that phenomenal.
It is phenomenal, and it goes to show that our stories and our life and our experiences, our morals, our principles, everything about us can live on and affect so many more people down the line if we pass those messages on, if we get them recorded in some way through podcasts, through blogs, books, video, all sorts of medium. And the other thing that I like to think about around legacy is to encourage other people to be like us and to maybe think of a relative. Doesn't have to be a relative, but maybe there is someone in their family that they admire, or they remember, or maybe they can research. And if they've done something that maybe resonates with you, maybe they're into art and you're into art or whatever it is, then investigate that, because it's such a life enhancing thing to do, to explore someone else's life, and the learning and the experience you'll get is phenomenal, and it's just enhancing your own legacy, and it'll open doors and you'll meet people, and you just don't know what may come from it. And And there are even people out there that live the legacy of someone they don't know, and that's also okay. I know a gentleman who's living Van Gogh's legacy, not related, never met him, years apart. But he's an artist, he admires Van Gogh's work, and he's out there teaching people through workshops and giving talks all about Van Gogh and his style. And then, of course, you've got tribute bands that can be traveling the world singing the songs of Frankie Valli or whoever. Never met them, but they love that sound and they've created a life by continuing to cultivate that person's legacy. I think it's amazing.
It is amazing. And music, as we touched on earlier, is such a powerful, evocative medium to use. What does music mean for you?
Music is very special because I've obviously been brought up very much surrounded by music, with it being played, with my grandfather encouraging me to be a violinist, pianist, learning both those instruments, doing all my grades. And as I got older, I even played for him on a couple of his CDs. So, music has been completely embedded in my world. I don't play so often now. I did dust my violin off last year to play in a scratch orchestra, to play the theme from the Railway Children for an event down at St Leonard's on Sea, which was amazing. But generally, at the moment, I don't have the time to play quite as much. But listening to music, I think in music, it can energize you in such phenomenal ways, whether it's to build you up or to calm and relax you. And you can just play that music, and it's just very comforting and very amazing. And it evokes memories sometimes as well, and all different emotions. I think, yeah, music's very special.
Now, I'm wondering if our grandfathers knew each other, Louise. I really am. I'm because they both at the same time were working for the BBC, and I'm sure there were some scores that he might have written. So I have this picture that they were at, these events, BBC events together and celebrating their different areas of how they
Be
brought
fabulous,
together.
wouldn't it?
Yeah, right. In fact, I'm going to start looking through some photos and see if I can find any. But
Be
this is the
incredible.
this is great, and the fact that our paths have also crossed, and that we are doing what we're doing because of what we feel is our purpose, and how it has become our purpose to talk about, for me, purpose itself, and for you, for legacy, and for all of the creative elements that are coming from that. But the living and loving of life, I feel like we've both got that from them as well.
No, definitely. My grandfather very much lived and loved life. He was, as much as he was very professional in the working world, family was also very important to him. He would never have compromised family for work. I mean, he had the opportunity to be Shirley Bassey's musical director, but the first job was 6 months in Australia. I'd just been born. And he said no. I mean, two reasons. A, he'd just become a granddad for the first time, but also it would have taken him off the circuit here in London of doing the work he was doing as well. He loved Shirley. It would have been an absolute honour and privilege to have been her MD, but it would have compromised him. It wasn't right for him. And he had a very good work-life balance, I would say. He enjoyed life, and as I say, family being important, but at the same point, work was extremely important. He was very, very professional.
Yeah, amazing. So what's next?
What's next? Well, there's a lot still going on with the album, I'll be honest. There's so many opportunities of where to promote it, different platforms, and different podcasts, particularly hopefully with America. That's on my wish list at the moment now, is to reach out to some podcasts in America where they specialize particularly with 80s and 80s music, 80s animation. So there are a few, and I'm going to reach out and see if they'd like to chat, just to help me really find the fans. I mean, I don't believe there's millions of them, but I would just like to find the ones that would like to have it, make sure they've all got it, and then I'll feel like this job is then done. And moving on next from that would be very much, I'm writing the book about my grandfather, just to, I mean, there'd be a whole chapter on Marvel, but just to make sure that I just log everything so that people can read it, hopefully feel inspired by it, his life and music, but also the cultivating of his legacy part as well. And then gradually release more of the music. There's so many film soundtracks to release, and even maybe take him onto cruise ships. would be a nice thing to. I've got a few talks about around him, and to sort of travel as he got us into cruising as a family. It was something he loved to do, and he did occasionally play on a cruise ship, playing the piano just to deputise a couple of times. So it would feel full circle in a way. And because of him taking us on as a family, my brother was 14, I think, for our first cruise. He's 2 years younger. And he ultimately then took that as a career, and he's now captain of a cruise ship. And that's also my grandfather's legacy. It's the decisions we make in everyday life, the conversations we're having in everyday life, the opportunity or the suggestion. And with Grandad and the cruise, he didn't make any suggestions other than, I'd like to take you all on a cruise for my 70th birthday. And that had a massive ripple effect of spurring my brother to do the right exams and follow a path that's taken him right up to the top there. It's still Grandad's legacy, because you can pinpoint it back to that opportunity that he did for us, even though there was no agenda attached to it, if you know what I mean. He didn't plan for this. He did know that my brother was doing it as a career before he died. Robert would have been about 27 when he passed, so he was well and truly in that world, but he never saw him make captain or anything. But to go back onto cruise ships now and to therefore speak about my grandfather just feels a bit like full circle, and it's the right market, it's the right people that I think will love the music.
Oh, I love it. It is incredible, these opportunities. And as you say, with hindsight, it's easy to see how the purpose and the path has been carved. And yet, we didn't know unless we look what the instigating moments are. So, Louise, I wish you all the best. It's a fabulous stumbling across of work that you had back in 2022 to give you that very clear and solid focus on why. How would anybody reach out and connect with you, especially if they know where those tapes are?
Well, for my grandfather and the music, the best place would be the Facebook page, which is Johnny Douglas Tribute. That's what it is on Facebook. There's also our website, which is dulcimerrecords.com. Dulcimer Records is our record label. And then for me personally, I would say the best platform would be LinkedIn. I am literally the only Louise Camby in the world, so I do make it easy.
That is incredible. There's very, very few people who could lay claim to only being the one with that namesake. So well done. Louise, thank you so much for sharing your focus on why. It really has been a joy. And I know there's so much more that we haven't had an opportunity to touch on, but that's why you should reach out and connect and follow Louise's journey, because it is just incredible what's to come, I'm sure. So do you have some final words, please, for the listener?
Absolutely. First of all, I'd like to thank you very much for this opportunity, Amy. It's an honour and a privilege to be on your podcast, which is phenomenal. I admire your work so much. But for the listeners, it's thank you very much for listening. First and foremost, thank you for listening. And I just hope music brings them a lot of pleasure in their life, whichever style of music it is, from classical to pop and rock and show music, which I particularly love as well. Everything in between. Just enjoy music, keep it in your world, and keep that work life and just life balance, and have a great time and enjoy every day.
That's a wrap for today, but the journey doesn't end here. Share your takeaways, leave a review, or post your insights. Your voice helps others discover the value of these stories. Want to dive deeper into purpose? Check the show notes for ways to work with me. Get a copy of my book, or to sign up for Friday Focus, my weekly newsletter packed with clarity and inspiration. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why.